In previous episodes, we've discussed with researchers the possibility of Bigfoot being real. Tonight, we'll hear the story of a possible Bigfoot experience from new friend Ryan. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and on this episode, we're talking to Ryan about some unusual experiences he had in his youth. I met Ryan and his wife at Small Town Monsters Monster Fest in early June, and we hit it off immediately. So I was thrilled when he agreed to share his experiences on the podcast. I find him to be a very credible person and very down to earth, and you'll hear that for yourself as he shares his stories. Let's dive in with Ryan. Hi, Ryan. How are you doing tonight?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so thankful that you joined me to tell us some stories from your past. And the first one is potentially a cryptid
Yes.
from your childhood. So where did this happen?
So this happened in, at least at the time, it was one of the furthest out suburbs of Pittsburgh, PA. Definitely, like most cities, it's grown up since then, and it's no longer one of the furthest, but it definitely was at the time. And it was within a housing plan that was surrounded by a ton of woods. So yeah.
How old were you when this happened?
So it's a little bit weirder of a story than I'm used to hearing. I think most people are used to hearing on podcasts because it's not exactly a direct story of my eyewitness account, but instead the piecing together of what happened to me in the woods behind my parents' house. It's probably about 7 or 8. And it's what happened based on some newly resurfaced memories and from my parents' recollection, as they were the ones who witnessed the direct aftermath of the incident with like just a completely terrified child. So I'm going to say 7 or 8. So we'll be looking at like 1986, 87.
Okay. So tell us what happened.
So I'll tell you part of what happened, and then I'll tell you how I was able to put it all together, because I think it's really the only way that makes sense.
Okay.
So, I mentioned that we grew up in the suburb. It was, upper middle class suburb, really nice. Most of the houses had the driveways that kind of ran alongside. And then there was a 2-car garage that was part of the basement floor of the house. So driveways ran alongside and then across the back of the houses. And butting right up against the driveways was about we'll say like a 20-foot tall, 25-foot tall hill that went right into the woods. And by the woods, it was woods. It was trees as far as you could see. It was some trees that were over 100 feet tall. There was a ravine, like the world's smallest waterfall, hills, all kinds of stuff. There were tons of vines. I remember we used to swing on vines and stuff the few times that I would go down there before sort of this happened. And other than that, it was just sort of your average neighborhood. Nothing really too weird happened or anything else. There were a lot of kids, a lot of stuff. And as far as the woods, I used to go down in it a lot. When I was younger, we'll say 4 or 5, we would go down with my dad and my dog and my older brother, who's 7 years older than me. And like we'd get firewood and stuff like that. And that was, fun trips. Our dog died when I was like 5.5, 6 years old. So I know that that kind of helped me place the timing of how old I was when all of this happened. But so anyway, yeah, we had this woods. It was fun. My brother and his friends would always go down there and they'd swing on vines, and he'd come back and tell me about all these cool stories and all the cool things they did and these forts they built and whatever else. And it was very much because he knew like I didn't want to go down there by myself because I was, little or scared or whatever. But like as I got like maybe 6.5, 7 years old, I started saying that I was going to go down there by myself or with my friends. And, of course, my brother would tease me a lot. I was too chicken to do it. There's no way I was going to do it, even if, I would go down with my friends or whatever else. So that kind of, bothered me. And like, probably most younger brothers, I like wanted to prove him wrong. Right. So one day in the fall, again, of either 86 or 87, I made up my mind that I was doing it. I remember I had this red hooded sweatshirt on, along with a Pittsburgh Steelers vest over top. That was just kind of like my outdoor outfit for probably way too long. But that, and I had this camouflage like camping canteen that I had gotten for my birthday earlier that year. It was all filled up with water. I was super determined. I told my parents I was going. Again, upper middle class neighborhood, literally zero concerns for my safety. And they were like, sure, go ahead. Went down in the woods, very determined mindset. And up until recently, I didn't really remember much else about the rest of that day. But as I did, and as I tell you this, I will then go into all of the things that started to make so much more sense about my life. So fast forward 34, 35 years. I'm grown. My parents no longer live in this house. I have my own family. Life is good. Things are great. One night in early October last year, I had this dream about being in those woods behind my parents' house and looking up at something. It was like shaggy, but it was like a very square kind of head, very big shoulders, no face, at least in my dream. And just waking up like, in absolute fear and sweat and being like, like most people when you're in your 40s, like, why am I still having nightmares? I'm, past this, whatever. Didn't think anything of it, told my wife, whatever. You talk over breakfast, and that's kind of how it came up. Went to bed the next day, had a similar dream. Really, like over the next 2 weeks, I had different kind of versions of dreams that revolved around being in the woods behind their house. There was this one fallen tree. And in the one dream, I remember these things were behind that tree and they kept like peeking at me. And I knew they were alive, but I could never see them. I was trying to catch them. And then there was this other totally off the wall dream, which is, I guess, again, all subconscious stuff. But somehow I had gotten a cell phone photo of a baby Bigfoot on my parents' driveway. And I was in their garage, which the garage doors are 2 garage doors, and they each had 5 windows across the very top of them. And like the mom was outside and basically like asking me to give her the phone because she didn't want like me to have the picture. Like completely ridiculous, right? But like all of these dreams somehow then always kind of led to this square-headed, shaggy-shaped thing standing over me looking up at it and just being completely freaked out. And again, this is like 2 weeks straight. Almost every single night I have a dream like this. And I'm telling my wife, and she's like, you're watching too much TV or whatever, like just maybe don't read, Lyle Blackburn books right before bed or whatever else. Like just kind of like tone it down a little bit and you won't have these issues, right? So it's October, as I mentioned, and we are like that Sunday, we're going to meet my parents at a pumpkin patch with my daughter and my wife. And so, my daughter's off running, looking for pumpkins and stuff. And my wife's a little bit ahead of us. And I'm walking with my parents. I'm just like, hey, just out of curiosity, like, did I ever say anything to you guys about the woods? Like about why I didn't like the woods behind our house? And my dad kind of looked at my mom and got this big smile on my face. And he was like, do you mean about the thing that was down there? And I was like, all right, let's elaborate on this. The thing that's down there. And he's like, yeah, like you went down there one day and you were gone maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I was raking leaves in the yard. And suddenly we just heard you scream like, no other scream. And I went around the house and I went down to the top of the hill and you were like crawling up the hill. You were covered in leaves. You had leaves in your hair. And we're just like trying to crawl up the hill and doing a really crappy job. You were crying and you just kept saying like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And when you finally got to the top and I got you and I was holding you, you just kept telling me there's something down there that's alive. And I would ask and you wouldn't say anything. You didn't want to talk about it. And you just kept saying, there's something down there. It's alive. There's something down there, something down there. And he's like, you wouldn't go to sleep in your own bed for like, I don't know, like a week. If you did, you ended up in our bed, like not, long after we went to bed. And there was probably a good 2-3 years where you just had no desire to go down in the woods. We were going to go down and get firewood. Your brother and I, like we used to do in the fall and in the winter, and you didn't want to go. Like you would always love doing that, but you didn't want to go. Like you just had no interest in it. And so I'm like, huh. So I kind of told them about these dreams, and they were just like, oh, well, we don't know. But then as I thought about it, and I was telling my wife about this later that night, all these things started to make sense. So growing up in this house, I always had this weird like fear of being in the garage and like the 5 windows across either side. But we had 3 kids, and we had an extra 2 refrigerators in the garage, like I think a lot of people did who have lots of kids. And when my mom would cook, she'd ask me to go down and get things. And I'd really kind of argue about it. I never wanted to do it. And then when I would, I'd go down to the door and I'd throw the door open. I'd reach around the corner to turn on the lights. I would then purposely only look at the ground, walk to the refrigerator, get whatever I needed, only look at the ground and get as quickly as I could. And the door into the garage was like between the doorway into the garage and the garage door, there was just something that our hose hung on. So we'll say what? It's like 2.5 feet. So it was very close to the door. Didn't want anything to do with that. Even, as a teenager, as an adult who came back for holidays, right? My mom would ask me to get something. I wasn't as weird about just looking at the ground, but it just felt really uncomfortable with those garage doors. That made sense. There was in our local public library, when we were younger, there was like a Halloween exhibit, and they had some of those, like the Time Life books with, Bigfoot or whatever else, the ones that had all the commercials. And there were some other books about monsters and Bigfoot and whatever. And there was this aisle where all that stuff was. And my brother, because he was kind of a jerk or whatever, like older brothers are, always tried to like shove me into that aisle, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I wouldn't look at the aisle. I always wanted to run past the aisle. But it was in the area where the kids' books were, but it was kind of off to the side for like older kids. So then that kind of like, I was like, oh, maybe that's, why I didn't want to be there. So this other part, this other thing that kind of made a lot of sense to me was my dad was very adamant that like he did not want us to leave the car at the top of the driveway. Once we had a bad windstorm and the lamppost that was at the top of the driveway blew down. So he was convinced like till they sold that house that it was just going to happen like every day. So he never wanted us to leave the car at the top of the driveway. We had to go around back, which again is right up against the woods. So even as a teenager, and I didn't get my license till I was 18, I had had some knee surgeries and stuff, and I physically couldn't drive. So even as a teenager with their car, I would drive it down and leave it so the sort of the entryway to the woods, because they had some bushes around their driveway, the side that was closest to the woods would be the passenger side. And I would get out and I would just book it like as fast as I could back up to the front of the house. Like I had a key to the garage door. I had a key to the back door, but I would only ever go in the front door. And I would just like take off. And I was like, oh, that was, kind of weird. Like I'm not scared of the dark or anything. Like, so all these things started like falling into place after my dad sort of explained this whole situation of that day to me. And so all I'm left to believe is clearly something was down there, or at least my mind took it to be. And I was scared enough that I literally blocked it out for 34 years of the actual whatever occurred. But the residuals of like being afraid to go in the garage, being afraid to be in the backyard, all that stuff had stuck with me and was just part of my everyday life after that particular situation, which, I don't know. So again, not exactly a firsthand account, but in piecing things together, it sure as hell seemed like I found something. I can also say that At one point, I was just kind of screwing around with the BFRO website, and not exactly where my parents' house was, but maybe, I don't know, we'll say 2.5 miles from where they were. There is a sighting of a Bigfoot that was by this abandoned office park. Like there was a sighting within there. It was a different year, whatever else, but like I don't know. I don't know what
Interesting.
happened. But all I can think is that clearly I saw something. And then I guess sort of the more interesting part is as I got, older and whatever, went through college and whatever else, I started to get really into Bigfoot and, reading books and cryptids and everything else. And just thought the topic was really interesting. And, actually like think there probably is something out there, at least was at some point. Um, but yeah, so that's my potential cryptid story and possible life scarring incident that I had.
So when your dad kind of filled in the blank for you as far as what happened that day from his perspective,
Mm-hmm.
did you explain to him like the dreams that you were having? Did
Yeah.
you fill that stuff in for
Yeah.
him?
So I kind of went back then and he was like, but so you said you had these dreams and now you're saying some things make sense. Like what exactly happened in these dreams? And so I told him, there's this, I'm looking up at something. I mean, I'm by no means a tall person. I'm like 5'8". So I could be looking up at a lot of things. But I'm looking so far up. It's clearly like when I was little.
Mhm.
Um, and there's this thing, whatever, I guess the something that was alive down there. So
Since you had that conversation with your dad, have you had additional dreams or did they stop?
they stopped. So I don't know why they started. They lasted for like a 2 week period, had this conversation. They stopped. I haven't, had any other dreams related to that particular situation or anything else. It's just sort of I don't know if like I had to process it, right? Like
Yeah.
psychologically to like get through it or get over it. But yeah, everything just kind of stopped. It was very weird.
Yeah, it's like your subconscious was ready to just purge that from your
Yep.
system. That's really interesting. So I I can kind of relate to the eyes down, got the feeling that like something might be watching you through the
Mhm.
windows. And it's not because I ever had an experience like yours, but being somewhat of a city girl, or at least a child who always lived in the suburbs, not far from the city, going up to see my mom's family in the Catskills.
Mhm.
I always felt like there was something watching from the woods. Now, it was probably deer or bear or
Yeah.
potentially a mountain lion because I haven't seen one of those up there. They say they're not there, but we've seen them. Um, but like that feeling that there's something watching and it's so eerie and you don't want to look because it could be something completely terrifying. And yeah, I used to be like that. The minute it got dark up there, I would just
Yeah.
get totally creeped out and want to be like in the central room or have the windows covered or whatever. I didn't want to potentially see anything outside looking back at
Yeah.
me.
No, and like I never was one to go camping. I had a girlfriend in college. She really liked camping and stuff. It's like, nope, not doing it. Like just I mean, we go for hikes, we go out in the woods, whatever else. I have no desire to be there once it's dark. Like just none.
But when you had the experience, it was daytime.
It was daytime.
Okay.
But I think for me, like, a lot of people, I think there's that like false safety of light. At least I could see if something was coming at me, right? Um, but yeah, I'm just like, whatever. And I mean, I also chalk it up to I just feel like man has evolved beyond the need to sleep on the ground, even with a piece of fabric between it. So um go Tempur-Pedic beds, I guess.
Yeah. I know when I was a child, I used to be jealous. This is so far off topic, but jealous of my sister because she was in a Girl Scout troop that would actually go camping. And I got to the age that she was when she started camping. And I had a Girl Scout leader who was just not interested in camping. And I got mad and I quit. But looking back, I don't think I was cut out for camping anyway. I don't
That
like
actually,
spiders.
yeah, that actually though reminds me of the other thing that made a lot of sense in all of this.
Mhm.
So when we were little, we would go to this camp that was in Erie, and it was a sleepaway camp. And the cabins were big, and you were, in your age group, whatever else, we'll say there's like maybe 20 kids in a cabin. But the tops of all of the cabins were just screens, right? I mean, whatever. It's a summer camp in the 80s. Nobody's glamping. There's no air conditioning. But I would sit there and I was fine during the day, never had any issues. At night, I would just constantly be staring at the screens, and most nights just like ended up crying. Like I was just so did not want to be out there. I wanted to be, with my parents or at home or anything but close to the woods. And I just could not take my eyes off the screens. And all I was looking at was like, moths and whatever else, but they're just, right out of that line of sight as far as I knew something was there. So,
Did your parents happen to acknowledge that your behavior changed after that day?
I mean, they acknowledged it to the point where they were like, I didn't, like I said, my dad saying, why don't you want to come down and get firewood with us and stuff like that. I was always maybe more of like I just same thing with you. Like I really didn't like spiders. Like I didn't really like to I would get dirty, like ridiculously dirty, like to the point where my mom would just like have us like strip naked and spray us off in a hose behind her house before
Yeah.
we could even go inside. But like, I don't know. I think they made note of it. But I was also like the weird one. I have a very big family and everyone was athletic, but I was artsy. Like very big extended family. I mean, like I said, there's only 3 kids in my family, but like my sister was a college athlete. Like I, I did the arts. So I think they just kind of always chalked it up to me just being weird compared to everyone else in the family. But they love me all the same and they're really supportive. But
That's good. Okay, so that was a really interesting story, and I if I had to guess, I would say that you probably did see something that a child would consider a monster, and us as adults who are interested in these topics would probably call Bigfoot. But unless you fully recover those memories, I don't know that there would be a way to confirm that. And I don't know, are you interested in trying to recover those memories?
I mean, I really haven't given it much thought. I've just kind of been like, yeah, it was probably Bigfoot. Like, I mean, I don't know what else has kind of a squarish type furry head with crazy hair and like big shoulders and um there was no like pointy ears on top or anything where it'd be like I don't know like a dog man or something else. No, it was like I don't know. I'm gonna go with Bigfoot or bust.
Yeah.
So
Okay. And it may be safer for your mental health to not recover the
I
memory.
mean, yeah,
So
I'm good now mentally, so I'm gonna ride that out. There's enough trying things in this world, but
I totally get that. So you have a different story with a completely different topic that I think my audience would be interested in hearing as well. And I know you kind of played it down when we were talking about it earlier, but I totally think it's worth sharing if you're willing to.
oh yeah, no, I definitely will. This is a UFO story, and it's completely like unrelated to anything that I just spoke about before. This was when I was a teenager. I was dating a girl who went to a different high school, and this wasn't even considered a suburb of Pittsburgh. This was far, 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 far out. Like I had to take the turnpike to get to her house. Um, Still within, I guess, the general confines of Pittsburgh, but this was not a suburb. And she and her friends, and we would hang out, I'd go out there on Friday and Saturday, we'd hang out, whatever. And her one friend, Tom, had this big Saturn trampoline um, in his yard, and we were just kind of whatever, jumping up and down on the trampoline, talking, laying on the trampoline, kind of everyone with their legs off, just like talking about stupid stuff and whatever else, and being teenagers in the 90s. And we're laying there, and Tom was like, "What's that?" And just kind of pointed up, and we were like, "What?" And he's like, "Watch that one star." and it was like watching Pong, basically. Like the star was just kind of like bouncing around. Like if you think of your field of view as like a square, there were tons of stars out there, and this was out, so you could see the stars, right? It wasn't like light pollution or anything, but there was this one star that was just kind of like bouncing in every possible direction and just like go in a line, and then it would like completely change direction and go like there were like invisible walls up there. And we sat there and watched that and talked about it and joked that it was aliens and whatever else. And we were probably out there, I don't know, 30-40 minutes, and it was just kind of going. And then I don't know, I got distracted or something, and then I ended up at one point looking up and it just wasn't there anymore. So again, like, most people say, I don't know what we on Earth have, or what, particularly what we had in the early 90s that like could bounce around like that in the sky that was a light. Um, but it's just sort of an interesting thing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a satellite,
No,
or a rocket launch or whatever else. We definitely didn't have um drones that
no.
could fly that high and not
And it
make any
was fast.
sound.
It was fast. Like it was bouncing fast. Like that's why I said like Pong, because it just reminded me of playing Pong on Atari, where it was just fast back and forth, and it was just like ding, 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 like just kind of all over. So like even if it was a drone, like let's say the military was testing drones in the early 90s outside of Pittsburgh for some unknown reason. Nothing's moving like that fast and bouncing around and changing directions that fast. Like it's just not. I mean, we don't have it now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what makes your story so interesting, is what it was for the time period. Even now, if I heard somebody say that that happened to them 2 days ago, I would still find it interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, in the early 90s,
And
that's
I
just
never really
amazing.
like gave it a whole lot of thought. Like I never really got into aliens or anything the way I got like into Bigfoot and in my 20s and beyond. So it wasn't like clearly did not have the impact on me that the other incident did. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of something weird that happened.
Yeah. And I'm glad it didn't have that impact, because then you'd be afraid to look at the sky on top of
Yeah,
everything
honestly,
else. I
God,
mean,
that's the
that's
last thing I would need, like fear of alien abduction, then I just wouldn't sleep at all.
really nobody needs that.
No, 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 they don't.
um, yeah. So, well, I appreciate you coming on to share these stories because I find them really fascinating. And I have met you in person and I find you to be very credible, which is why I asked you to come on the show. And
Thank you.
again, because you're not out there screaming, I saw Bigfoot. You're like, this is the experience that I had, and this is what I've put together. And it seems to point in that direction. So I can appreciate that too.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'll never know what I saw, and even if whatever I do hypnotic regression, I think by this point I've probably filled in things in my mind of what it is and what it's not. So I don't even know if that'll make a difference. Um, yeah, it's a interesting story, interesting anecdote, and I wanted to share it. And I'm glad that I was able to share it with someone other than my wife, who found it interesting. But like there's only so many times you can talk about the same story, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
especially if you've already gone through every detail that you can remember. That's unless some new details surface. Yeah, a
yeah.
hundred times is probably enough, I'm sure.
I mean, again, I think for me, like the real telltale sign was just when I asked my dad, and like the look on his face when he looked at my mom after I asked that, and he was like, "You mean like the thing in the woods?" And I was just like, "Okay, let's explore this." But just the sheer look on his face, and like just kind of got this smile, like, "Oh, you're you've remembered this now, or you finally want to talk about this, or whatever." Like it was I don't know, it was just very interesting and a very unusual sort of face that I had not really ever seen my dad make before.
Mm. And it seems like it would feel pretty validating after 2 weeks of
Yeah.
dreams about
Oh,
something.
absolutely. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like he had to think about it. He immediately said, when I asked, like, did I ever say anything about the woods? He's like, oh, you mean the thing down there? Like it was just like right away.
So
There
it
was
obviously made an impression on him that you responded that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a parent, if there was a situation where I couldn't see my child, I heard them screaming and I found them like, crying, screaming, covered in like leaves and mud, trying to crawl up a hill as fast as they can, doing a terrible job at it because they just weren't even, actually thinking about the process of going up the hill. Um, I definitely think that would stick with me.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. You have one other
That's really
really
cool.
weird story that probably doesn't belong here, but it's still interesting.
Please
So
share.
when I studied abroad, part of my college, they kicked everyone out junior year, and we're like, you have to study abroad. Like, we don't know where you're going, but you're not staying here. So I went to Ireland, and it was a really cool place where I studied abroad. Half the school was actually an old castle, which was just completely badass. But my girlfriend at the time and my sister came over, and they came over right around the time of St. Patrick's Day. So we went to Dublin to see the St. Patrick's Day parade, right? Um, so we're there for 3, 4 days. And we see the parade, whatever. It was great, it was cool. And then I think this was the last day we were there. It was the last or second to last day. We were just, in this pub getting a drink, and I'm talking to my girlfriend, and my sister is, I think she's like doing some sightseeing or something we didn't want to see. And this guy kind of comes up to me out of nowhere and taps me on the shoulder. And he's like, hey, I bet I can guess your birthday. And I'm like, we both sort of turned and looked at him, and we were like, is this guy drunk? Like, what's going on? What's the deal here? And I was like, sure, go ahead, guess my birthday. Absolutely. I'll play the game. And he's like, it is not April and it's not June, it's May. And I was like, okay. Like, I'm not telling you either way, but keep going. And he's like, it is not the 18th and it's not the 20th, it's the 19th. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, okay, what? That's totally right. And immediately I'm like, where's my wallet? Like, did someone steal my, and my girlfriend's looking at like making sure. And like, as I'm looking for my wallet and stuff, he's just gone. Like, we can't find him. We don't, like, we couldn't see him. Like, it wasn't like St. Patrick's Day. So it wasn't like packed or anything. It was just like a small kind of out of the way pub. Um, but the guy was just gone. Like I immediately looked down to see if I had my wallet, and she looked too. Like, we were just like, ugh, and then like looked up, and he was just gone. And it was just, I don't know. Is that a Faye thing? Is that just some weirdo street musician, magician? I don't know, but
Well,
it's
I
that's one
mean,
of those things too that's just kind of stuck with me. Is like just such an odd experience.
that's impressive because even if you went to the fair and
Yeah,
at the fair they've got some guy who's like, I'll guess your birthday within 2 months or something stupid like that, like if he
yeah,
just walked up and nailed it.
yeah. It was really oddly specific, and it was, again, for both the day and the month. It's not the one before, it's not the one after, it's the one in the middle. It's not the one before, it's not the one after, it's the one in the middle. And it was just like, and like, typically, like, there are Romas in Ireland, and
Mhm.
sometimes they'll do whatever sometimes they do different tricks, whatever else, like, and it's just like kind of like busking, right? Like, just a different way to like earn some money in the street. um but it wasn't that. The person didn't ask for any money. The guy just kind of disappeared.
Disappeared.
And it was
Yeah.
just like, it seems like kind of the dumbest thing ever to, like, I mean, I guess it's super cool if you can do that, to just go around and like mess with people, right? um but like, at least like stand there and then like bask in the praise of people being amazed or something. Don't just disappear. But
So
just,
what did he look like?
I don't have like a great memory of what he looked like. He was pale, which always stands out to me because I'm insanely pale. So when I think someone's pale, like, they're pale, they're like borderline dead. So he was pale. He had like just short, kind of brown hair, no pert or anything. Um, like no facial hair. I don't remember eye color, but just kind of like very much sort of a generic looking dude who was about my height. So we'll say like 5'7", 5'8", which is actually kind of average height, a little bit tall for people in Ireland. So I don't know, but like again, just kind of gone. Like we looked at each other, looked at my wallet, looked at each other, and then just like, where the hell did he go? I mean, it
That
was very like TV, right? Like you would think like you'd see the door just close. It wasn't. It was just like suddenly he was just there, and then suddenly he was just gone. And it was, but even just walking up to me and like tapping me on the shoulder to get me to turn around to talk to me.
right. And to do that to you and not be like, do your girlfriend, oh, you want me to do it for you too? Or, somehow
Yeah,
show off
just
that.
completely like random. Again, like no robbery or anything, so completely pointless. No basking for praise. So like just literally, why in God's name would this happen? Like, why would someone do this? Um,
So do you have any family history with Ireland?
Not really. No, we're primarily. I mean, my dad's side is almost entirely German. My mom's side is a whole like smattering of English, Irish. There's a little German in there. There's some French, like just kind of all of Western Europe.
Yeah,
So
that's
not like really much of anything. Just this complete randomness. And like where I studied was not close. It was about 4.5, 5 hours from Dublin. So it's not like I had been to Dublin once with like the class, right? Like we went as a group. We were there for like 3 days. Didn't really have any birthday conversations. This wasn't in the month of my birthday or anything. There's like, like fine, maybe if I was wearing a hat or something, you could guess it was my birthday that day if I had a party hat on. But like no, it was like not, it was months before. So like why me, why this, I don't,
right.
it's just again, it's a random super weird story, but it's just something that's kind of stuck with me. um
I love it. But I will ask what some of my skeptical friends would ask is, do you think maybe your sister paid him to do that?
like if my sister was cool in that way, I would totally be like, yeah, but like I'm like the family jokester and things. Like my sister was like hardcore into like sightseeing as much as she could. And so I would say like negative percentage chance that it was my sister. Like she just doesn't think of fun stuff like that. It's a great trick. I would totally pay someone to do it now to somebody I know. Like, but like I never considered it because it's just so not her. Also, like there was like another 4 hours before we even saw her. So
Yeah,
it was just a very, again, very weird situation. We were just like having a drink, talking.
I love it. And I mean, it could be something like Fae because Ireland is famous for fairies. I have a book back here behind me on my
Oh,
bookshelf that's all about the fairy folk in Ireland.
but like
And
no
they
one
like to
tried to
mess with
like
you.
get me to come to their like feast or anything. Like there was no end game of like trapping Ryan in Fairyland. It was just like we're just gonna tell you your birthday and walk away, and maybe it's like a rite of passage, like they have to like trick someone like that.
Maybe. Or
Who
that's why I
knows? I'm
was
really extrapolating a lot from this, but we'll
well, I'm a writer, so I naturally just try to find some backstory to it. So that's why I was asking if you had a family history there,
yeah,
because
no,
maybe
no
it's
family history. No, like I was the first one to go there. Like I said, my sister came to visit at that time, and then like I don't know, like 5 years ago, my parents went like as part of I don't know, like an old folks trip to Ireland, basically. Um, but yeah, it was just an interesting odd occurrence that seemingly had no end game or point to it. Just kind of happened.
I love those one-off stories that don't make any sense. They're just
Yeah.
So much fun.
It is. And again, like, I guess like it stuck with me. It's something I'll never forget because it was just such an odd experience. But who knows?
That's wild. So, any other cool stories? I mean, three is that's a good bit.
No, I mean,
But
those are probably my like most impactful, like weird random stories. I mean, there is an aspect to my wife and my daughters and my wife's family of being able to sense stuff like presences. Um, like one time when we were dating, we went to this bed and breakfast, and they were like antiques, whatever. It's like set up like an old house because it is an old house, and there's this like woman's picture on the wall. And it was one of those weird like where they take the photo and then kind of color it in with like paint, like. And she was like, "Can you like take that woman's picture down because she's in here and it's freaking me out." And I
oh
was like,
whoa.
"I don't know that they like if we redecorate the rooms here, but sure, like I'll put it in the closet. Like what else are you going to do?" And like our older daughter had this when we lived with my mother-in-law for a brief period of time, and she swears that the one day she woke up in the middle of the night and saw my father-in-law, who I never met. He was dead probably 10, 15 years before I even met my wife. um, saw him walking up the steps and sitting at the top of the steps, which my wife later confirmed was something that he did. Like he would just kind of sit at the top of their steps. So I don't know. And then my younger daughter, we had her when we were living with my mother-in-law, and there was a lot of times where we would be like in her room, and she'd be in a swing or she'd be playing and she'd be doing other things, and like typically when you're engaging with a kid, they're looking at you, but there'd be times where she'd just like completely face like a different direction and be laughing like she was interacting with someone or whatever else. But I'm like new dad waving my like, pay attention to me, right? I'm like the cool person. I'm your dad. That's like a wall. It's not at all as interesting as I am. So I mean, whatever. There's so much written and talked about and thought about. Babies aren't jaded, so they can see everything that we all should be able to see. So it very much could be that. Who knows? But yeah, I don't really have any other like cool stories. That's just sort of where I'm at this.
Those were cool too. So I love it. We got to talk about Bigfoot and UFOs and random possible fairy folk. Who knows?
It can be in
Or
like the
just like,
director's cut of the episode. We can have that.
I love it.
So yeah, I don't know. But I think you should try to like talk to more people at Monster Fest and find more guests for your show. Because I think the people that go to those things, either A, they're just like super, super into it and will like believe in anything, or they're there because they somehow got into it, most likely from some sort of experience that they had. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. That was this time around, my focus was trying to meet the podcasters that I'd talked to online, and like Shannon, I've been on her show. So it was just great to finally meet her in person, talk to Micah Hanks, and
yeah.
the guy, all of that. That was awesome. And next time I'm gonna actually talk to people that have no idea who I am, and I have no idea who they are. Like, I mean, I love that we connected because it made the weekend more fun for me.
Well,
And y'all are awesome.
it was fun for us too, and thanks for saying that. And we had a blast with you as well. And that Leo and Peggy, is it Peggy? I don't know. We happened to run into them a few times over the course of the weekend as well. And I think there was a good community there, a good group of people, and it was a really good event.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back next year. Just I'll get to see y'all. I think I'll get to see Craig, who's the writer that I kind of went and networked with the podcasters with that night at the bar.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I made a few new friends, and everybody else, even the ones whose names I didn't catch, were just the coolest people. And I talked to the bartender who just seemed like she was always there. The
Yes.
day, yeah, Saturday night when everybody was kind of winding down and people were starting to leave or go to bed or whatever. And I was like, how has it been here? Like, how has it been for you? Because I've seen you all weekend. So I don't think you've even slept. And she said, this is the best group we've ever had here. And I was like, well,
Awesome.
that is awesome. That's what I want to hear about people like me.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely nice people is it's fantastic. And I really found that like with the vendors, with the other people, like no one was rude. Like it was just I used to work in at when I was in college, I worked in like a convention center. And
Mhm.
like in general, like people, particularly the vendors, were like huge jerks. Like just really crappy to the people that work there and everything else. And it was just like such a like nice like camaraderie style like vibe to like everybody. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I hope it's the same next year, but twice as big.
Yeah,
So like
honestly.
Friday night at the bar when I was talking to Scott from Astonishing Legends, he said it's good that we're here and it's good that we're meeting everybody now that is here because this will be the smallest year. Like he predicted it. He's like, this is if they do it again, this will be the smallest year they ever do. So
Yeah.
enjoy it. And I was like, yes, take it all in. But
Yeah,
I
I
can't
think
wait.
that's why, like, too, I think that it was just such a great experience in addition to being like just such a surprise. Um, but just that it was so small and so intimate and like, like we talked about, got to talk to Mark, got to talk to Seth, got to talk to anyone really. Absolutely everyone was like available for talking, for pictures. Um, didn't care, Lyle didn't care. I went and talked to him when he was eating his dinner and he was like, no, it's fine. I'm just, I'm waiting for it to come. Like, absolutely, let's chop. Like it was just like everybody was just so freaking nice. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. That's I'm glad we all had the same experience too, because that means we're all going back. Okay, y'all, I'm going to cut the conversation here because it continued for a while, and it's probably obvious that we really enjoyed the Small Town Monsters Monster Fest experience. This is not a commercial for the conference, but I will say they're selling tickets for next year, and I've already bought mine and booked a room. It was that much fun, and the people really were awesome. Thanks again to Ryan for sharing his experiences, and thank you for listening. If you're interested in sharing your own paranormal experiences, or if you have an idea for an episode topic, please reach out through the contact form at peeppodcast.com. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to keep up with the podcast and all my creative and energetic endeavors. I only email it once a month. You'll receive briefs on recent episodes, information on any upcoming appearances, news, and some additional fun stuff. For example, in the latest edition, I had a link to download a free short story written by yours truly. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app. Share it with friends and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Ratings and reviews help the podcast be found by others. A huge thank you to everyone who's given the show some love. I really appreciate it. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, financial support, or through the donate button on the website, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.